What up? Welcome back to another episode of the Dealer Talk Podcast. This is your host, Herb Anderson, and thank you so much for tuning in. In today's session, we're going to be breaking down the independent side of the industry. As a franchise dealership, can you benefit from some of the philosophies, from some of the strategies? Make sure to tune in, take some notes, listen on some of the things that are advantages that the independents are capitalizing on that you could possibly implement in your store to get some additional wins. If you're a decision maker at an independent dealership, then definitely you want to be ready to take down some notes. The guest that we have on today is talking about some things that you should be paying attention to if you're making decisions for your independent dealer. Very, very excited for this session. The guest that we have is just amazing. It was a great conversation, and it's one of those sessions that I'm just really, really excited to share. Not just because it's new content for us as far as something that we haven't covered in the show, but I think the insights and the perspective shift on this session is going to be a valuable one. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to share this podcast with somebody that can benefit from the information. If you like this episode, please share it so they can take these insights back to the dealership and implement in their day-to-day. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's check it out. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dealer Talk Podcast. This is your host, Herb Anderson, and my co-host, Eric Nelson. Eric the Viking Nelson, to be specific. What's up, Eric? How you doing, man?
Well, I'm wonderful. And look, it's important that when you pronunciate my name, it's actually a capital V, right? So when you say Viking, make sure that the V, the first initial V, is in fact capitalized. Please. From here on out, I need that attention to detail out of you.
You got it, man. You got it. Dude, so we missed you on the Chris Collins episode, unfortunately. How did it all work out? Are you okay? Everything good?
Oh, well, listen, this is an adventure. It turns out that for the state of Utah, even though it might have been good for other states, heck, it might have been good enough for the military. For the state of Utah, I was not a Nelson. I was still a Molesky. So I had to go into the court system and actually stand up in front of a judge and, in fact, say, yeah, if at all possible, would you do me a favor and just, kind of recognize me for the name that I've held for as long as I can remember. So I went in then, and then we got down a driver's license. It turns out I'm a real person with a real driver's license. I feel whole. I feel as one.
Well, I'm glad to have you back on this episode, sir. It's always better when you're along for the ride. And today's going to be a good one, man. We haven't really covered this topic at all. In particular, the independent side of the business. We have a great guest today to kind of have that conversation. So let's get into it, man. Without further ado, the guest for today is Mr. Dave Lemmon. Dave, what's up, dude?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Oh, fired up. Leaning forward. Let's get into it. Feed us, man. Feed us.
We're excited, man. I think this is going to be a good one. The first question we always ask is a recap on your background, just to kind of give folks a little bit of insights on your experience. And can you share some with us?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been selling since I was 15, and I just turned 50. So a few years doing that. About 5 years ago, got into a company called AutoSuite, which is in the digital marketing space for automotive. Their primary platform was kind of a, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, doing the classified sites and a little bit of advertising. Loved it. Started working with dealers, really enjoyed it, really loved the digital marketing aspect, became a massive student of it, just studied everything. Parted ways with them in April and decided that, over the last few years, I saw this incredible deficit in what was being provided to independent dealers. So launched Revolve Digital with the idea of serving that really underserved market, and had no idea what I was really getting into. But it's an adventure every day, man.
Hey, so Dave, let me ask you a question. And I think this is a great question to ask right out of the gates. Do you think as independents, do they hold an advantage today over the franchise dealers? Do you think there's anything to gain there?
So I think the used car market versus the new car market is going to be advantageous right now.
Yes.
But beyond that, here's the real difference. So I've gone to, 20 trade shows over the last few years, digital dealers and NADA and NIADA and driving sales and on and on and on. The difference when you go to NIADA, or let alone one of the regional independent shows, the difference in attitude of the independent dealers is crazy. These guys are so hungry to learn, to get better, they are wide open to making changes, to, doing whatever it takes to sell more cars. And they fully acknowledge that they're not experts in everything.
Interesting.
You go to a lot of the franchise-based shows, the franchise dealers are walking around with their badges flipped over. They're pretending they're on their cell phone as they walk by your booth. They're not that engaged. These guys, Sean Welsh and I, when we did NIADA a couple of months ago, Sean was just blown away. I mean, these guys were coming up to him at dinner after the show and saying, "Hey, I saw you today. Can you answer some questions for me?" So, their big advantage is just their ability to learn and their interest in learning. And that's huge. And there's no restrictions, right? I mean, these guys aren't being told by a manufacturer, you have to use this website or this CRM or this DMS or this marketing company. They can use whoever is actually best in class. And the OEM referrals are rarely that.
Do you, in today's a culture, especially because, it just feels like there's a shift happening. I mean, because of these big franchise dealers, kind of being hamstrung, you're talking about, it's kind of like the Titanic mentality where it takes 5 miles to be able to complete the turn. Do you think that these guys are just too big to recognize change, or, hey, look, man, do they even care? I guess is a great question.
Here's the thing. I think those guys are so used to putting so much money out every month that as long as they feel like their lead count is this magic number that they settled on being right, and their sales number is something that they can be comfortable with, then they don't look that hard at what's going on in too many cases. Now, there's exceptions to the rule. I mean, I've worked with several franchise stores where there's some of the sharpest guys out there, and they're deeply involved in making improvements and processes and marketing. But for a lot of them, it's on autopilot. And, if it's in their mind, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Well, the reality is it is broken, and they could be doing better. But they're writing their $50,000, $70,000 a month marketing check, and as long as 1,000 leads hit their door, they feel like they did everything right.
What do you think, Dave, or some like if you were to kind of contrast the two, right? Independents versus new car retailers. What do you think would be something that the new car stores could learn from, benefit from, and kind of to expand on that a little bit? So experience obviously it's kind of a buzzword in the industry. Everybody's talking about that and how to create the better experience in order to differentiate yourself and all these things. Do you think that the independents may have an advantage because they're smaller? They can maybe pivot a little bit quicker. Like you said, there's no restrictions on what do you have to use and who do you know what I mean? Like they can make their own decisions quicker.
Well, I think there's a mindset difference too, right? So when I go into an independent dealer, 9 times out of 10, every single person that works at that store, because it's a small staff and because every day they're talking to the dealer principal, they're talking to the guy that writes the check.
Right.
He's sitting across the room from them. Every single person on that staff is deeply committed to the success of the business. You go into a franchise store, you've got the turnover issues. You've got people that are, I'm going to do this as long as I need to, or I'm going to do this till the next cool things comes along. When I go into my independents, man, these guys are willing to live and die for their boss, because they know him, because that's the person that when they have a question, they stand up, walk across the store and ask that guy. They see the impact that their effort, because it's a small staff, their effort has on the actual success or failure of the store. And I don't feel like a lot of franchise stores, especially the further down the food chain you get in personnel, I don't feel like they have that feeling that they're making that kind of an impact to the overall business. And that's huge, man. When you get people that are trying to help your entire business be successful as opposed to just collect their own paycheck, you get an entirely different output from your staff.
Oh yeah, no, for sure, man. I totally agree with that. Kind of continuing the thought here. What about the strategy part of it? As far as, one thing that comes to mind in particular is you wrote this article on Craigslist, which I highly recommend that people check that out because there's a lot of good information there. And you talk specifically, one of the things that caught my attention on that was the localized audience, right? Do you think that independents may benefit from that better, like, and not just Craigslist, but things like Let Go and Offer Up? Do you think that they may be doing those things better and seeing some real return on investment on those efforts than the others?
Yeah, I did. Well, and I think, first of all, they do them.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's number one. They actually use those tools, and a lot of the franchise stores don't. A lot of the franchise stores are like, we don't want Craigslist leads. They're all bad leads. We don't want Let Go leads. They're all bad leads. Well, that's nonsense. A lead is a lead when it comes from, if somebody goes on Craigslist, finds your car and sends you an email or a text or calls your phone number because they want to talk about that car, that's no different than a Car Guru's lead or a Cars lead or anything else. And the independents don't have this wealth of leads where they can just go, I don't want those leads. So they're happy to use a low spend channel that's going to drive local, low funnel leads. And yeah, I mean, sure, some of those guys, their credit's so bad they can't write a check to Pizza Hut. Some of those guys, they want to make you an $8 offer on an $8,000 car. Yeah, that's all real, but it's probably the same percentage as a ton of the other lead sources. So they use those sources, and some of those are really inexpensive. I mean, Let Go, you can use that for like $99 a month. It drives a ton of leads. Craigslist, $5 a post. If you're putting up a post a day, 5 days a week, you're spending $25 a week. It's crazy how inexpensive it is. And if you're, choosing cars that you think are really going to be suited well for Craigslist and putting up those 5 cars a week, you might be surprised how many phone calls you get on the lowest spend imaginable for your store. So that's really the big difference is independents are looking for low-cost solutions and trying them. And franchise stores are like, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to spend $4,000 on Car Gurus, and I'm sure that's going to be great.
But do you think that there's so some of the conversations that I have, and I kind of have been posting on this recently, but when we're having these digital conversations or we're talking about third-party sites or things of that nature, and I don't know when this thought process arise, but it's like, okay, so now we have the internet, it's borderless, so we should be catering to market or to consumers that are outside of our backyard. And to a certain point, I agree with that because that is going to generate some extras. But man, I guarantee you that a lot of these dealers are not captive they're within 10 miles of their dealership, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the crazy thing. It's like, if you have 100% of your local market locked down, awesome. You're the one dealership on earth that has that. Chances are you have 5% maybe, right? So yeah, I mean, this concept that we suddenly need to increase the area that we're pulling from at a much larger spend, by the way, when we haven't really focused, there's so many advantages to advertising in your own community too. And, when you're advertising to people that are within a 10-mile radius, your social content can be community-based and be really engaging that way because you're talking to people that get it. You're not telling people, giving people directions for an hour and a half drive to a place they've never been. It's, hey, where the Popeyes is on the corner, we're next door. There's a familiarity with, and people like dealing in their own neighborhood. People like dealing with their local business. So there's just, trying to make that expansion. And don't get me wrong, I have had dealerships, particularly on Craigslist, that will, there'll be a store in Cleveland and they're running ads in Pittsburgh and Columbus and Cincinnati. And they get some leads. I mean, they do. But part of the reason they do that is it's really inexpensive. But the reality is, if they did a better job of focusing just on their local community, they would do it 1,000 times better.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I did want to bring up the fact that, there's a lot of things that I'm just not really pleased with that Herb does. Probably number one is the way he looks. He's a very sexy looking individual. I believe he's like 7'2.5". I believe that's what he boasts. That's what he puts on his card anyways. Probably his golf game being number two. And then number three, I'd have to go with the fact that he asked me my number one question and you went ahead and probably gave the best answer, but I wanted to be the one responsible for that. But let's go ahead and go with my backup plan and a lesser question, I'm sure, but let's try to make it as impactful as possible. Working with independents, are there pitfalls that independents should be paying attention to today in today's environment?
Oh, absolutely. So, here's the thing. So I go into the independent business and, let me tell you, my business model in April when this kicked off was really simple, really scalable, really sustainable. I was on a fast track to have 25, 30 dealers. It was, I'm going to come in, I'm going to analyze what you're doing with your marketing. I'm going to help you come up with an actual cohesive strategy around driving more first-party leads. I'm going to turn you onto a partner network that I trust to get that done, and then I'm going to measure it, right? And it seemed awesome. And then I got into the stores. And I realized that oh my God, I mean, you got dealerships that are using logbooks still. I've got one of my dealers has his AOL email address as the email published on his website. It's because nobody has serviced this market and nobody really attends to the independent market. And frankly, a lot of the companies that do, their solution for it is just to come up with something cheap, both in performance and price. So these guys a lot of times just don't have the very basic foundational systems in place to even begin to do what my original business model was. So, now I'm having to come in, I'm writing, flow charts for lead management. I'm writing, chat and text templates and phone scripts and, everything else to try to get these guys. And it's because, generally an independent dealer, the owner is a guy who is great at sourcing cars and great at selling cars. That's about it. Right. So he knows he has to be doing digital marketing. He knows he has to be, to have this digital component to his business, but nobody bothered to teach him how. And, the thing is, too, so what are they going to do? They're going to go to the vendors that they see franchise dealers use. So if they don't go to the super cheap solution, next thing you know, they've got a dealer.com website, or they're paying, somebody $4,000 a month to help them with their Google Analytics. And none of those solutions are made for them. None of them are appropriate for them. And so, the real problem is they don't have, and they also don't go to NADA and Digital Dealer and Driving Sales and all of these places where you can at least get exposed to a lot more. So they don't have vendors actually marketing to them and showing them a lot of different things. They don't have the national shows to be exposed to them. And they end up kind of falling victim to some of and I mentioned this right before we started. I think there's some bad actors out there in our space that, they end up spending way more than they need to for something that absolutely helps them in no way, shape, or form. Whereas, a franchise store has your manufacturer. I don't necessarily always love the OEM recommendations, but they do have this network of all through their brand, their tier 2, their OEM, everybody's kind of vetting stuff. And they have that information so much more readily available.
Yeah, I mean, what are patterns for success for independence you recognize? You're like, you walk into a store, you recognize, because listen, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're looking at an income sheet or whatever the situation might be, there's always going to be patterns you're looking for. Now, and you've been doing this for how long now, working with independents?
Well, I mean, I worked with them the whole time that I was at my previous gig, too. That was, a big piece when you're doing Facebook marketing and Craigslist and things like that. Okay. But I've been working since April just doing, full consulting in the stores all the time. And, one of the big things right now for independents that is their single biggest challenge, and the guys that are really killing it are the ones that have this locked down, is sourcing. These guys are struggling getting inventory.
Wow.
You've got, auction is normally not a great way to get inventory. And now that you've got Carvana in the space going to auction and overpaying just to kind of lock down all the decent inventory, these guys are having a really hard time keeping cars on their lot. So the guys that have a better handle on that are instantly seeing way more success right now.
Yeah.
And that, maybe they have some out of town auctions, or they have a really good way to buy from customers. But without that, I got one of my stores right now that he usually has about 60 cars on his lot. I think he's got 31.
Wow.
And that's his biggest challenge right now is having the inventory to sell.
And then, well, I mean, where are they finding them then? So what are the suggestions on how to overcome that? Because I mean, you get stuck into those ruts. You're thinking, okay, well, I can just go to the auction for on Friday, and I come back with a truckload, and that doesn't happen. And so what's the solution?
I'll tell you, one of the big solutions is marketing for it. So one of the things that I'm doing for most of these guys, I am running small paid search campaigns for them. What
a great answer.
And one of the paid search campaigns that we build out, one of the ad groups, is people searching for cash for my car. Sell my car today.
Great answer. Yes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And it's been huge, man. I mean, you go in and you look at the click to call extension, and it's, outperforming every other ad group they have. So, you combine that with maybe some Facebook, maybe some social ads for the same thing. I wish there was an easier way to do it, but, one option too is to always use Facebook Marketplace, Letgo, Craigslist, all of those, the places that they're advertising, but also have for sale by owner listings, is not a bad way. I wish, again, there was a better way to use that tool, but there's not. But yeah, man, the advertising's been huge. So that's been a big one. I've got, one of my stores that I first launched that with has seen a really nice increase in being able to buy straight from the public.
Yeah, no, I like that you talk about, marketing to purchase, right? Because I agree. I mean, if you can get the market straight from the consumer, it's just a better buy, right? So it kind of in line with advertising, right? Do you think that the common strategies that are available today, and maybe common is not the right word, but follow along with me here for a second. So the SEO, SEM, the building content. Do you think that all those things apply still to an independent, or maybe they could do something that's more social media based, like Facebook ads, and maybe just becoming really good at building content in their backyard? And the reason I ask is this: I know that you're very proficient with Facebook, and we've had some conversations about it on LinkedIn posts and things of that nature. And I was doing a lot of Facebook for my clients, and I find them to be very effective and at a minimal cost. And when I think about the what marketing should be, it should be the most frequency at the least amount of money, right? That should be the objective. So do you think that an independent dealer can benefit more from just kind of doubling down on that aspect of it? Or do you think that there's opportunities to maybe increase the budget a little bit and go after the SEM, the bigger spend, the bigger marketing strategies?
Sure. So, the biggest thing I preach to my guys right now is to end their addiction to third-party leads. So when you walk into an independent dealer, they may have a $10,000 a month marketing spend. 9,000 of that is split up between cars, Trader, Gurus, Pure Cars, or True Car, or whatever it might be. And they're super low probability, just not great leads. So none of them have a program.
No leads at all, man.
I mean, yeah, they're not performing for these guys. They're closing 2% of their leads or something, but they're terrified to turn those things off. Now, here's what I found. When they start doing minimal, and I mean really minimal, paid search and social, they're able to drive first-party leads that close at a much, much higher rate. I've got one guy that is, for the first time ever, he's getting web forms, he's getting, Facebook leads, and we're closing those at somewhere between 8 and 10 times the percentage that he was closing his third-party leads. So if I can get him to cancel one of those third-party providers and redirect that spend. Now, here's the other thing too. So with paid search, there's a lot. I mean, God, how many providers for paid search are there out there? And I'm going to say 98% of them are really not very good at it. I mean, easily 98%. There's the exceptions. I mean, there's guys like Reunion Marketing that are just crazy smart and do really good work. But for the most part, I can go in, create the type of search campaigns that I think really work. So I've got a guy that's spending $300 a month on paid search. He sees about an 11% click-through rate on average across all the different campaigns we're running. We are not buying his brand at all. In fact, it's a negative keyword. So these are all strictly people searching for specific low funnel interest keywords. And I think we're at 90 cents cost per click, and we're like at 11% click-through rate. He's seeing somewhere between 15 and 20 click-to-calls. He's seeing an additional 5 to 10 web forms of $300. Why? Because it's built out with really strong keywords that I'm spending a ton of time managing and analyzing and making sure that they're good. Most of the companies out there are just doing cookie cutter programmatic. This is what we think works, so we're just going to install this everywhere.
But do you think that there are holes in the in most markets when it comes to independent spending on on that type of channel?
Yeah, I mean the keywords that I'm buying, and I'm not going to give away all the secret sauce, but the keywords I'm buying are keywords that absolutely identify real shopping behaviors, real search behaviors, and real search intent for very low funnel shoppers, and no one's buying them. It's why we're getting them so cheap. So yeah, I mean, there's huge holes in the paid search strategy from franchise stores all the way down to independents. Most of them just don't really understand it enough to know what's good or bad. You've got a lot of the providers out there, I don't think understand it themselves.
Yeah, man, that's so true. That's so true, man. So I've started doing this video series on LinkedIn about that specific thing, about a complete digital strategy. Because every time, especially now, because I'm in the fix op side of things, and as new car contracts, everybody's looking for where can I get more profits. So now, I've been having a lot of discovery conversations, and during those conversations, and when we talk about digital strategies, it's crazy, but not everybody, but the majority of the people that I talk to are focused only on paid search. And paid search is not a strategy. There are so many other elements to that.
Right. Yeah.
It's an element to it, but if your strategy is just paid search, then you're missing a ton of stuff. Absolutely. You know what I mean? So when we talk about
Facebook is crazy powerful and so inexpensive.
And so that's what I was going to ask you. So when it comes to the independent, is it really worth it for them to kind of go and compete in that area, right? Where it's a lot of new car dealers, maybe not a lot of independents, but I think on the new car side, dealers have kind of mastered it. I'm not going to say it's effective, but they've bought into the concept that they need to be on there, and they're spending crazy amounts of money, and obviously they have deeper pockets and stuff. So for the smaller guys, is it more advantageous to do to just focus on Facebook and really get good on the social side? Obviously, that's not a full strategy, but when you look at cost versus ROI, do you think that may be a more effective way to kind of tackle it?
Well, we're doing both. Yeah. I mean, so with my guys, I have a combination of things happening on Facebook. So the first thing that I'm doing on Facebook is I have a couple of dealers that just don't spend, they're just terrified to make big changes. So we're doing really incremental spending increases. And I'm managing personally a few $100s budget on Facebook for them, creating the ads myself, creating Canvas ads and experience ads and delivering them and measuring them. Once they hit a level where they're able to spend a little bit more, I want out of that. I want to turn it over to a professional. And in my case, the professional that I trust for that is Dealer OMG. Those guys down in Austin, Texas. So then
hold on. It's Dealer who? Dealer
OMG. So Dealer Online Marketing Group. It's a guy named Andrew Street and Keith Turner down there. And these guys worked at Facebook for years, left Facebook, started an agency that services automotive and does really one thing, and that's Facebook. So, they're an inch wide and a mile deep on just Facebook. And they're super good at it, and they've come up with some programs that are really appealing for independents because they're not $10,000 a month too. So once I have a dealer that's really ready, that has bought in. So, a lot of my job right now is getting them to buy into this stuff. So if I throw $300 a month at Facebook ads that I create myself, a month, 2 months from now, they're like, this is crazy. I definitely want to spend more. Cool. Let me turn you over to the experts.
Yes. Go ahead. Was there more? I'm sorry.
No.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about service. What are your thoughts on service?
So, one of the things that I was when I was at AutoSuite, when I was at my previous job, I kind of came up with the concept for our Facebook advertising plan and rolled it out and started marketing it. And one of the things that I really thought we should be promoting was advertising for service. And here's the thing, man. It blows my mind that a franchise dealer spends $50,000 a month on marketing and then sends a free CRM template to their existing customers.
Oh my God. Amen, man. Oh my God.
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. It is the craziest thing I've ever seen. So, I bought my car, expensive car, bought a BMW a couple of years ago. Okay. So the store that I bought that car from has sent me random, like no consistency. Like once I'll get one email and then 9 months later get another, 3 days later get another, 15 months later get another. And they are the worst. They're not even HTML. So it's an image that has specials on it, none of which are clickable. So I can't even go to the website. And then the other thing they've sent me twice is trying to sell me insurance. So I've never been back to that dealership for service. I found a different dealership in town that I like. I service with them. They have great marketing pieces that they actually spend a little money on. And it's nuts to me. And, then I had a call. Oh, I don't remember when it was. I think I actually posted on LinkedIn about it. About 2 months ago, I get a call here at like 8:00 at night, right? And it's some service center in Illinois, I think. And she's like, hey, we have a notification that your check brake light is on and we'd love to have you come in for service. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, that brake light's been on for 2 months because I don't drive that much. And second of all, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. So I don't know what marketing program you're paying for.
That's hilarious.
They're doing a terrible job. So yeah, man, the service marketing is just awful across most stores. I mean, they don't do it. They're always shocked that they have such bad retention. And it's like, so what did you do to keep your customer? Oh, well, we sent them a free email out of our CRM. Oh, okay. That didn't work out, really? And by the way, you spent $5,000 on a conquest email, which you're intentionally trying to send to the dealership down the street's customer, and they're doing the same.
Shocker. Yeah, man. So that's my. Oh, don't even get me going there, dude. Why? There's so much value in the DMS of the dealership, right? Because those customers said yes to you already.
Yeah.
They bought the car.
Yeah.
They serviced the car with you. They continue to say yes to you over and over again, and yet you don't spend. You rather spend. What's the average right now? I think it's like $500 to acquire
560 or something
to acquire a new customer, and you got a bunch of customers that will consume your information on the cheap. Just do it effectively.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I mean, there was a company that used to sell, and I don't think they're even around anymore, but there was a company that sold this data reanimation was their big tool that they sold. And basically what it was they realized that dealers were just awful at managing their existing customers. So they would charge you thousands of dollars to go into your CRM and DMS and try to figure out what the actual contact information for all of your customers is, because you've never tried to contact them for 5 years. So you would spend thousands of dollars for them to reanimate your own data because you just let it go dormant.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. And kind of on that note, so one of the things I wanted to definitely make sure that we talked about on this one, because it's a big one, and I think the independents do such a much better job. And I'm kind of hoping to get your insights, or maybe even some suggestions that can be passed along for the bigger stores and the new car stores. But I want to talk about referrals, right? Because I think the independents are so strong at that, and they almost have to be, right? Because it's a big part, or it should be a big part of their monthly business. What do you think they do differently that's better, and how can that maybe translate? Maybe not exactly, because obviously it's a different model, right? But maybe tweak it a little bit, or something like that maybe new car stores could implement, or could benefit if they implement it.
Sure. So, I mean, here's the thing that's crazy. I would say my independent stores see 3 to 4 times the percentage of repeat and referral business as franchise stores. And guess what? They don't even have a service bay.
Yeah, right.
So they don't see them again until they're buying another car. But the part of it is I think when people buy from an independent, they feel like they're buying from a neighborhood, family-owned business. And there's a true relationship there. And when they're buying from a franchise store, they feel like they're buying from Walmart. I mean, when you go buy from the corner store and Bob, the owner, knows your name and, knows what you're there for every time, you go back to that and you enjoy that shopping experience, and you feel like, that you're a truly valued customer. And that's a big part of it too, is feeling like you are valued as a customer. And I don't think franchise stores do a great job of that. I will also tell you though, most of the one thing marketing wise that most of my independent dealers do a really nice job of is that there's thank you cards, there's birthday wishes, there's, anniversary of your purchase wishes, all of that stuff. So, that's, and again, it's the same thing. It's value. The customer values the dealer because they feel like it's a locally, family owned business, but the dealer values the customer so much more. The dealer really doesn't feel like there's 50 more people behind that guy just waiting in line to come buy a car. Every time they get an opportunity to sell a car to somebody, that's a valuable relationship that they never want to have an issue with. And I mean, I think franchise stores could create that experience again, but I just don't think it's their priority.
Well, do you think that it's because of the volume, like you said? You think that they're just obviously they have big deep pockets, and people are just coming in that they feel like maybe they can sacrifice a customer here and there or whatever?
I mean, I think they know what's wrong and they don't know how to fix it because they're so deeply committed the other way at this point. I think they've put so much into conquesting that new next customer and all, spending tens of thousands of dollars to find the next new great customer, that they're so driven down that path now, turning around and admitting that maybe this is not the way to go is just inconceivable to them. I mean, it feels like an entire shift of your business model. Not to mention, let's be real, the OEM is telling them to do that.
Oh, dude, I love that. Yeah.
Right? And the OEM is telling them, oh, hey, we got you. We're running brand loyalty campaigns. We got you. Well, that's great, except the two the two CDJR stores are the ones buying conquest lists for the other CDJR store in town. So sure, they're still buying a Chrysler, but they don't care who they're buying it from, and whoever's conquest marketing them strongest is going to pull them to their store. It's not helping them at the tier 3 level.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, I love that. No, because as I think about it more, it's so true, because it's just a push, right? Go get another one and go get another one, and yeah. So, all right. So we're really close here. I did have one more question that I wanted to ask you before I ask you the question I ask everybody. And that has to do with omnichannel. Now, I know you've been an advocate of that. You've talked about it in some of your previous posts. I'm a huge advocate of it because I've seen it work firsthand. And when I say omnichannel, obviously I'm talking about talking to the same audience with the same look and feel on multiple different platforms. The reason why I like it is because consumers in today's world are everywhere, and you should be there too, right? And it should not be, your email shouldn't be different. Your email message and feel shouldn't be different than your direct mail, and shouldn't be different than your SEM, and it shouldn't be different than your social, right? Because you want to capture those customers wherever they are multiple times, and you want to make sure that they get that same exact message.
100% agree.
So maybe 50,000 view on omnichannel. Where do you see it playing the role in the future of our industry? Do you think that it's something that's going to become more and more a topic of conversation and more a part of the overall strategy? Or do you just think that it's a buzzword like so many other things out there?
I think it should become all of those things, but here's your problem, right? Is the marketing strategy for 99% of the dealerships in the United States, and I don't care whether you're talking franchise or independent, your marketing strategy is just a collection of tools. They're unconnected. There is no overriding cohesive plan behind it. You've got this guy, I pay for this guy I pay for this guy I pay for this, and none of them talk to each other.
Yes.
So, unless there's a real return to agency relationships that manage all of that, and this is something, so when I was at AutoSuite, one of the things that I had a ton of success with, and I think it's why I have a lot of the relationships I have today, is I fully recognized that what I provided was this niche, and they needed somebody that was really good in these other niches. So I went and found those people. I went and found Reunion Marketing. I went and found Sean for vendor management. I went and found the guys at Dealer OMG for Facebook. And so I was able to then make recommendations of partners, not vendors, for each one of these things that the dealer was doing, and we could all talk to each other and make sure we were working together. The problem is nobody really does that. Nobody wants to do that. There's so many people just, kind of just so committed to doing their own thing, and they're not going to work with other people. I guarantee right now that if you hired most of the search vendors in the automotive space right now, they aren't going to ask you, what do your Facebook ads look like? They aren't going to ask you what your TV spot looks like. They're not going to ask you, what your billboard or your sign or any of those things look like, because they don't care. They care that your check clears for paid search. And until that changes, and frankly, that's going to be on the dealers. The dealers are going to have to be the ones that say, I'm not okay with that anymore. And I need my vendors to work together towards one mission. And if you don't care about what my other vendors are doing, then you're not my vendor.
No, dude, I totally agree, man. There definitely needs to be more, integration and cohesiveness of messaging and strategies, right? It's just effective. It makes sense.
Yeah. Well, everybody had agencies 20 years ago. Everybody had an agency 20 years ago, and that was a big difference. And I'm not necessarily saying that I think the answer is that everybody goes back to hiring an ad agency to do everything. But the dealer can hold that level of accountability of their vendors to make them function that way. And until they do, it's not going to change. And, the reality, as I've said a couple of times to you guys, I think there's legit some bad actors in our space. And unfortunately, they're pretty market penetrated into the space, and it's not in their best interest for that to happen.
Yeah, no, I totally, well, from my background, I totally get what you're saying. Like when I was with Cox and Auto Trader, for example, like we sold a lot against those things, but we never offered a solution. It was just like, no, just put it all into Auto Trader. And that's not an effective channel. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be a one strategy. You know what I mean? So.
Well, and the trusted voices out there that unfortunately have become authorities on a lot of this stuff are again, they're not giving good advice. I mean, there's companies out there that charge thousands of dollars to teach dealers how to look at Google Analytics. It's like, come on, man. There's a company that does Google Analytics training for free. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but there's a company out there that does Google Analytics training for free, including certification. It's called Google.
That's such wasted time. Yeah. That's such wasted time.
So if you're spending $3,000 to get Google Analytics certified, just light it on fire. Like, I mean, that the dealers are going to have to take some of this on themselves. They have to take the onus and the responsibility to hold these vendors truly accountable and to stop just trusting the loudest voice in the room.
That's probably the biggest benefit that Welch provides for us is that, look, man, I have enough to do. And what he does for us is exactly that. He interprets all that information, Google Analytics. I mean, for what he charges, it's a joke.
Oh, it's crazy. And, the thing is, look, Sean comes in and he's going to measure what matters.
Yes.
He's not going to tell you, okay, so we measured 20 different conversions and I can tell you, this, and this, and this, and none of them are particularly valuable. There's some other providers that are doing something somewhat similar to Sean. And the reality is that their entire job is to bury their dealer in a data report every month that makes them more confused than before, because that's why they keep paying them, because they just are like, I don't understand any of this stuff. I mean, apparently we had a 20% conversion rate on people that clicked on a second photo on a VDP. Like, no, you need to know how many people clicked the call, how many people used your trade tool, how many people submitted a form, how many people went to your finance link, the things that actually show you true buying behaviors and turn them into people that you can talk to on the lot. That's it. And Sean simplifies that really well.
Well, sir, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. This is going to be a good one. I can tell there's a lot of nuggets here for sure. I want to give you a chance to let people know how they can get in touch with you. But before we do that, there's always one question that I ask everybody that comes on the show, and that's, where do you see the automotive industry headed in the next 5 years and why?
So I think one of the biggest changes is going to be digital retailing, and I'm not going to be the sky is falling guy. I post a lot about Carvana on LinkedIn. And the reason is I have no belief at all that suddenly everybody's going to be buying cars online. But here's what I know. I know that Carvana sold 44,000 cars last quarter. I know that they are on their 22nd quarter of triple-digit revenue growth. I know that they made $3,100 per copy last quarter. GPU.
What's the national average? Like 22, right?
Yep. So these guys are doing something that is servicing a market. And you know what? Maybe it's 8%, maybe it's 10% of the market that wants to shop that way. You better be prepared to address it or lose it. If you want to be hey, customers really want that face-to-face, okay, cool. You're going to lose 10% of your customers. Figure out a way to plan around that, or figure out a way to catch up. I mean, one of the things that I saw on LinkedIn recently, and it just made me crazy, was a guy using everybody loves Chick-fil-A because they say please and thank you, and it's a great customer experience, and that's why people will be going to dealerships, is that same customer experience. Well, you know what? I've eaten Chick-fil-A a whole bunch of times in my life. I've never been inside a store, ever. I use Uber Eats. It comes to my house and I buy that online. I bought my car that way. For the most part, I buy people that shop that way, like me, want to shop that way, and you better have an answer for it. And I'm telling you, 5-6 years from now, if you don't have any answer for it at all, and it could just be, as Sean says, creating processes within your store to be able to deliver that kind of experience and not spending $2,000 on a digital retailing tool. But whatever it is, be ready for people that don't want to come spend 3 hours in your store.
Right on, man. Hey, dude, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's Saturday. It's like 9:00 for you. Thank you, man. This is awesome, man. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I had a great time, guys.
Appreciate it so much.
So how can people get in touch with you, man? And we'll obviously put it in the show notes too, but let's
Yeah, absolutely. So best way to get in touch with me is going to be my website, which is www.dealerrevolve.com. So it's Revolve Digital. It's dealerrevolve.com. And all the information's on there, or just hook up with me on LinkedIn. I'm on there a lot.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you don't follow Dave on LinkedIn, you need to find him right now. Definitely do that. Lots of good insights. He's got, I think, 6 or 7 articles or 5 articles on there.
Yeah, something like that. I should have a lot more, but I have a 1-year-old, so the last year has been a little nuts.
All really good stuff, man. So thank you again for taking the time. Really appreciate it. That's all we have for today, folks. And as usual, we'll talk later.
You made it all the way to the end. Congratulations. Thank you so much for tuning in. We truly, truly appreciate it. If you like this episode and you think of somebody that can benefit from this information, please make sure to share it. Share this podcast so that they can take these insights back to the dealership and implement on their day-to-day. Thank you so much. And as usual, we'll talk later.